No problem. Okay. Brilliant. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee, held at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 14th of September 2021. Just quickly remind everyone that this meeting will be recorded and copy archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when others are participating or speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up? You can obviously use the hand up function, or I'll look out for you on the screen here in your pictures, or you can use the chat function. If any participant has any difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let myself know, or as the chairman or the democratic officer know. If they have a webcam, then they should try turning this off, as this will help with the broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth. So at least you can hear the conversation and speak when required. So with that out of the way, thank you everyone for joining, committee members, officers, and registered speakers, which we don't have. So on to the agenda. So agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Amy, do we have anyone?
I have received apologies from Councillor John Thomas, Chair, but no further apologies yet.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. Now we can move on to agenda item 2, which is of the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of July 2021. Does anyone have any questions or thing they want to raise regarding the minutes, or are you happy to pass the minutes as is?
Move the minutes.
Okay, Councillor Thomas moves the minutes, and I will second that. So okay. Thank you. Agenda item 3, to receive declarations of interest. Would anyone like to declare interest? I can't see anyone with their hands up. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, take that as no. And now we can move on to the main section of the this evening's meeting. Agenda item 4, which is Foster Wales, which is presented by Amy McArdle, who's on here. Hi, Amy, welcome. And she is the Vale of Glamorgan Marketing and Recruitment Coordinator. Over to you, Amy.
Just a couple of sentences, if I can, Chair, just to introduce Amy, which Karen would have done if she was here. So apologies that she's not able to be this evening. We wanted to take the opportunity to bring this presentation to you because it's a really exciting national initiative in an area that I know will be really important to you because it relates to us being able to increase the number and variety of foster placements that we're able to offer to the Vale's children looked after. And just to remind you of our context, we have had a rising number of children looked after over the last 18 months, which coincides with the pandemic that we've all been experiencing and the associated challenges for families in that context. We were at the end of March 2020 successful in reducing our children looked after population in line with our intentions, and that position has not been maintained. So we wanted to bring this to you to be able to share that initiative. There are some members last night who were part of corporate parenting panel and will have received the presentation. So it is a duplication for you. Apologies for that, but I'm hoping you won't mind listening to it twice, and I'll be grateful for your support in hearing from Amy and asking any relevant questions, which we hope, as always, that we can assist on. So over to Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so I'll just share my screen with the presentation. Here we go. So as Rachel touched upon, I'm here to talk about Foster Wales. So Foster Wales is an initiative that has taken about 2 to 3 years in the making, and it's a collective of all of the 22 local authority fostering services coming together to increase the awareness of fostering, build a conversation around fostering, but obviously to recruit more foster carers into the local authority under one umbrella. So having one brand and one face of fostering through local authorities will allow us to compete in quite a competitive era at the moment against the private agencies out there trying to get the foster carers into the market. So as you can see a little bit here in the visuals, we've developed a brand using some bright colours and bringing the Foster Wales to light, and using our tagline of working together to build better futures for local children. And all of our messaging is very much based on that, keeping our children local, working with local professionals and the people on the ground to really understand the children in the community, and also the foster families or potential foster families in our community. So just a bit of a background, the National Fostering Framework established the programme a few years ago based on all of the analysis of how many foster carers we needed across Wales, numbers including up to about 550 a year. This was pre-pandemic, so we're expecting numbers are probably even more than that post as we are coming out of the pandemic, and also the variety of children. So a variety of families that we're needing as well. So the children and the scope of children and the needs of the children are differing and increasing in their variety. So we need to increase the number of foster carers in the local authority, but also that variety as well. And hopefully this brand will allow us to sell ourselves much better than we have done before. The brand management and the support that we've had from Welsh Government and some agencies that we got on board was all about how we really look at the benefits of local authority fostering, look at what we do really well, but sell it better than we may have done in the past, and making sure that the support that we provide is at the forefront of the messaging that we give out there, which is not something that most local authorities have done very well previously, and making sure that the not-for-profit message gets across, so that we're making sure it's really clear to the public what the difference is between fostering with your local authority and fostering with a private agency. So hopefully from the get-go they're choosing us, as well as once they've spoken to us and really understand through our conversations with them. So Foster Wales was the development of the visuals, but now it's going into the stage of us developing into our service and making sure the customer service that our foster carers receive from the moment they put in an inquiry to when they start fostering and beyond is the best out there, and the support that we provide is the best out there as well. So a little introduction is what I've just touched upon. Hopefully what we've got coming over the next few weeks is really going to have a big impact on the public of what they'll see and build the conversation around fostering, and part of the initiative of our internal communication as well is making sure that us within the council and all workers across all services are understanding the issues that we have over in fostering and how many more carers we need, so the message can trickle out into the community and we can hit those people that would be really great foster carers, or maybe have considered it for a while but never taken that leap to pick up the phone or pop onto our website. And as the collaboration, we are Foster Wales, and we're working collectively with all of the 22 now to make sure that we're consistent, we're providing the same messages and the same support, and we're able to collectively put our money together to hit the public market much better than we have done before. So as I've said, the brand is really focusing on the not-for-profit. The child is the main focus, bringing children into the local community and staying in the community so that we've got that better stability and the better longevity of our placements as well, and making sure that we understand and present the better matching process so that we know the families, if we work with the foster carers, we know which children might work best with them, and those children that we might need to provide additional support so that foster family can work well and thrive together. So that's another reason that we've changed all our messaging and changed all our materials to make sure that everybody in the public is aware of the differences and is really clear of how excellent the support that they'll get from us really differs to other services or other agencies out there. So part of the brands and the part of the 2 years of work is also identifying 5 values. They're very similar to values of local authorities across Wales, but really thinking together as Foster Wales now of what we want to portray in all of the messaging, but also in all of our conversations with foster carers, members of the public, and within our team. So being dedicated and real is stuff that we do really well, but we need to sell better. So real, for example, is the fact that we are the people on the ground, we're the decision makers, we're the ones that know the children, we're the ones that work with other services that the children will see. Whereas the private agencies, often those decision makers are sat in head office very far away, don't know what the families are really like, don't know what's happening on the ground. And we need to make sure that that message is really quite clear out there. But then differencing is looking forward looking and powerful. Sometimes haven't been great at looking like this as a council, so we need to make sure that we are forward looking. We're surprising them with the events that we put on for our carers, where our trainings are going above and beyond, and that they know that they can come to us, and we'll be thinking that the next step for whatever that family or the child is supporting needs. And that's where all of our literature and all of the social media and TV ads and things that you will see coming up will hopefully drive these messages forward and have these values at the heart of all of them. So just a little example here of some of the local imagery you'll see. So we've done a lot of work of making sure that our pictures are localized as well, so that it represents us and it represents the families that we're hoping to attract. So you'll see Barry Beachfront, you'll see Cowbridge High Street, and those sorts of areas. So people who actually live in our communities will really understand the pictures and relate to the families they may see there. So obviously the main goals of this project is for us to become Foster Wales and to stay competitive across all of the private sector in every aspect of our service. Sending out that public message, as I've touched upon, and making sure that we've got that community presence, making sure the conversation is really growing about fostering in general and the need for all different types of foster families for all different types of children. Creating community ambassadors in the same light, so making sure that all of our services are talking about fostering, all of our employees understand the need for more foster carers, so that we can generate the conversation naturally through there, and delivering the national campaign. So part of this project and Welsh Government funding is to make sure that we are doing stuff locally and we're doing our local messaging, but we've got a national front as well. So that will include TV advertisement, radio advertisement, and social media campaigns. And we need to make sure that on a local level we're matching up to that. And then ultimately we need to increase the number of foster carers approvals that we've got on board and increase the diversity and the abilities of our foster families, so that we can hopefully make the matches that we need to make, and hopefully we've got that variety, so when a child comes in we're not looking at the desperate to find a home, where we've got choice of which home might be best for them, and also that will help the retention of our families as well, and will help making sure those placements are stable, and we're able to provide things like respite to help our foster families with those long-term children as well. So over the next 6 weeks is a really great timing for me to come and speak to you today, because as of Monday we're launching our TV advert, which is the first time a fostering advert has gone out on Welsh TV, and we're really excited about it. It's really hones in on a young teenage boy coming home to his foster family, and the warmth around that, and the messaging through the campaign that goes along with the TV ad is all about opening homes across Wales, and if you've got a warm family feel to your home, opening that up to a child that you could potentially support is something that we want to encourage people across Wales to do. So we're really hoping that you guys will see the TV ad go out next week, but also all the social media and other aspects online, really supporting that TV ad as well. We're working with the Senate to make sure that we've got some public installations, again re-enhancing the TV ad to make sure that we're trying to get a viral moment and get this message out there as much as possible. And hopefully again we're just going to make that big change. It's kind of us coming together to say enough is enough, and we really need our foster carers coming forward to us. We're doing really well in the Vale from this year. We've had 8 new foster carers come on board since April, and we're hoping to double that over this year. So we're already seeing a real trickle in the moves that we've already made, and we're really hoping that Foster Wales is just going to enhance that and take us forward even more. That's Foster Wales. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Amy. That was very interesting and informative. Any questions for Amy? Councillor Amy, I see your hand up on the chat feature. Hi.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, Amy, I just want to ask, like, I'm somebody of mixed parentage, and I was just wondering, does Avela Glamorgan take that into consideration when we are fostering children, and also adoption, but that's a different thing, but fostering, and like, say if a child was came from a Welsh speaking family, does it the foster parents would they have to keep up that the Welsh speaking? I mean, do you take that into consideration? I know fostering is not long term like adoption, but do we take that into consideration? And also children who are being fostered from Muslim backgrounds. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rachel will jump in as well, but we've that exactly like you've just touched upon. We would encourage that, and if we've got those options available to us, particularly with Welsh language, if we've got a Welsh language foster carer, we would want to encourage that match so that they can support the language. And if not, part of the training of our foster carers is all about identifying what cultures and heritage the children already have and how they can support them, or how they could upskill or learn themselves to be able to support them, even if it's not a culture that they have themselves. So we do that. Part of this project's going to help that, because sometimes our variety of foster carers isn't strong enough to be able to do that in all circumstances. So that, again, part of our mission is to make sure that we have the variety coming forward, so we are able to do that much better.
Thank you.
Rachel.
Thanks, Amy. Amy's done really well, Councillor Avia, in responding to your question. I just wanted to let you know that each time we place a child, we go through a matching process, and we're considering the range of children's needs and looking at the range of options that we have. The reality for us is those options are very limited currently, but I wanted to assure you that there was a process and a commitment to matching, and a commitment to filling the shortfalls that we might find that we have. And Foster Wales is all about extending the options that we have, but I wouldn't want to be unrealistic with you about our challenges in matching ideally in the current climate.
Thank you. Councillor Griffiths, I see your hand up. Hi.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Amy, for the presentation. I'm a childcare lawyer for a local authority, so I know one of the biggest issues that affects people getting involved in fostering and adoption is turnover of social work staff. I assume one of the biggest reasons people use private agencies is that there's an understanding, perhaps rightly or wrongly, that there's a less turnover of staff. How is this new initiative going to ensure that people who are signing up with local authorities fostering services, that they are going to have the level of interaction that private agencies can perhaps offer with a continuation of social work?
I think that's a bit more of a difficult one for me, but it is part of. You're correct in the sense that they do find that, and I think particularly across Wales, conversations that come from other foster carers, there is a slight myth that there's better support in these agencies, often because they are corporate companies and they are working nationally, so they can pull those resources much better. Sometimes they might have a social worker that actually lives in England, so that consistency could be better for them, even though the support isn't what we want it to be. And all of our messaging in the literature that we put out is going to be focusing on making sure that we're dispelling those myths, and hoping in what my ideal is in the Vale is that we get them to a point where they pick up the phone, so that I can have these conversations with them. I'm the one that would answer that call, so that we can really have a natural conversation and dispel them. It is a difficulty, so I'm sure Rachel might touch upon that even more, but yeah.
That's a really interesting observation, Councillor Griffiths, and not one that I've come across, if I'm honest, in terms of the independent agencies being favoured for their consistency of staff. And I'd be really interested offline to have that conversation with you, because I've never heard it. and we have to be What we have to be sure that we're doing is promoting what the local authority offers. And yes, of course, local authorities lose carers to independent fostering agencies, but we've also seen a number of carers return because they don't have the levels of support prior to the pandemic, because they didn't have the number of placements, or they didn't like the way that the independent fostering agencies matched. So I think the important thing for us is that we're making sure that we're really clear about what the local authorities offer is. But I know you're not a childcare lawyer in the Vale, but in a neighbouring authority, and I'd be very interested to hear observations that you're picking up, because they are new to me.
And the observations is not so much from my work, but more personal matter. For example, my sister is a foster carer for a different local authority, and I think in the 7 years that she's had the children, she's had about 15 different social workers, supervising social workers. Part of the concerns that she has had is that if you were with a private agency, would you get less turnover than what you're having? I think it is accepted across the board generally. Social care within the local authority is struggling. You do get massive turnovers of social workers, and that is going to impact any prospective adopter and or foster carer if they feel that they're not getting the level of support that perhaps they would require in circumstances, specifically with children with additional learning needs. For example, if somebody is placed in a long-term foster placement with additional learning needs and they're getting turnover of social worker year on year on year, eventually you will get to a point where the foster carers are going to say, I can't do this anymore, and they give up. And that's probably why we have the decreasing number of foster carers, and we just don't have enough placements for children in need at the moment.
Just want to be careful that an individual personal experience isn't described as a broadly factual perception. That isn't to dispute your individual experience, Councillor, but I just think we have to be careful that that's not suggested to be the position. I don't have any child who has a turnover of 15 social workers in the Vale, either as a supervising social worker which supports the foster carer, or as a childcare social worker who supports the child. That isn't to say that we don't have challenges around recruitment and retention, but again, that isn't something that a child or a foster carer would experience in the Vale in the way that you've described. And we take that really seriously. So I don't know whether you're aware that one of the developments that we made in September 2018 was the development of a children looked after team, because what we said actually is we want children who are looked after to not be part of a composition of caseload that may include safeguarding, court work, etc. We want children looked after to be prioritised for a social worker. And that's been really successful for us in terms of our commitment to children looked after. That doesn't mean that there aren't children looked after in our other teams, but the vast majority of those children are in our children looked after team. And if Karen was here, she'd be really passionate about the success of that team for our children looked after. And we've got placements is probably one of our most stable teams. So just again, by way of reassurance, so that we reflect the Vale experience rather than perhaps in other local authorities. Thank you.
I see your hand up, Amy. I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit about our retention. Our retention of foster carers is really strong in the Vale. So we do find that once we have them in and we've got past those barriers initially, they do realise that the support that they get is strong. We tend to need more carers because our placements are stable, so then they're used up. So we need to keep filling that funnel.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Hi. Partly to support Owen Griffiths' comment, it was certainly true in the past in some local authorities that there was a turnover problem in terms of staff, and every time a new social worker was getting involved with a family, then they had to relearn what the previous social worker knew, and perhaps hadn't managed to express in the notes and so on, and the little nuances of the kids, their preferences, and of the foster carers, and to get to understand that. The issue always was that foster carers need to feel strongly supported. They need to have social worker almost on tap, so that when an issue comes up, they can get an immediate response. Certainly, in reference to Julie's question about trying to match the kids with the foster parents in terms of ethnic origin, that is the ideal, but there's not always the numbers of the ideal match isn't always available. I recall a family that I dealt with many years ago in London, where I had 3 little kids of Asian origin that we were looking to place together for many good reasons, and that we ended up placing them in street in Somerset because we couldn't find anybody anywhere nearer that was willing to take 3 small Asian children. And it was actually quite a white community with white foster carers. And although it felt and tasted really, really bad, it was down to these kids had been in a children's home for 18 months, and is it better for them to be in a family that doesn't quite match them, or to stay in a children's home? And certainly these children needed a loving, caring family, and the basis of it was the kids didn't care what colour they were so long as they had the family. So yeah, it is a balance, but I mean, I had the privilege of seeing this last night as well at corporate parenting, as Amy knows, and it's a good initiative. It takes to a certain extent control back from the profit-making IFAs, whose main drive is profit for their shareholders, and puts it back into the priority back on the kids, not on the and the carers, not on the profits. So I welcome this new initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Gray. Hi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for letting me contribute. I, like Councillor Thomas, saw Amy's presentation last night, and every time there's a little extra nugget that I didn't get last time. I think the plot of this national TV ad, I don't think was covered last night, so I'm looking forward to seeing that on the television. I think that something we covered in corporate parenting panel last night, which I think I'd like to share more widely as well, is there'll be lots of opportunities to engage with this material, and as councillors, it'd be really important to spread that message. And we need to make sure as many different communities and groups have a knowledge of this, and it may be by having a conversation with the authority about being a foster carer, other things, they get more involved, they become more interested, maybe they consider other ways of supporting children in the area, and I think the initiative is a good one. And to take on some of the points made before, there's certainly a political determination across the board that we will absolutely support ramping up the recruitment, the numbers to support more carers. It's not a case of just let's pile in as many carers as we can get and we'll just support them by the numbers that are there. Recognising everything Rachel said about recruitment issues, we understand that there needs to be this ramping up alongside, and that's part of the managed plan that's going to hopefully come forward. We all want to attract as many applicants as possible, and I'm sure, again, as Rachel alluded to, if Karen was here, she'd be talking about the increasing rates that we've already had for carers being approved, and the sheer number that have been approved more recently in the Vale. And absolutely, the more that we can get this local connection and people supported to be the right carers for the right children, touching on Councillor Aviott's point, the better. And so yeah, absolutely, it's great to hear the initiative. I'm really excited to see the campaign start on Monday, but I just make a plea We will no doubt be sharing some stuff that you can put up onto your social media and clips and images and whatever else. And I just ask that you all join us in this effort to get as many foster carers as possible. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Well said. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Amy. That was great, and best of luck on the campaign. I can't wait to see those in the next few weeks, and it would be great to hear that if what numbers are after, if it gets you get from that, that'd be brilliant. And thank you, Rachel, for your contribution as well. Thank you both. You can stay if you like, or you can leave. It's up to you, but thank you. Okay, on to agenda item 5, which is a reference from Cabinet, and I believe Lance will be taking this, which is closure of independent residential care homes, which, like I said, is from Cabinet on the 19th of July 2021. Hi,
Yes,
Lance.
I will take that, Councillor Griffiths. Thank you. As you've said, it's a reference. So this report, it feels like a long time ago, 19th of July, and I think at the point that we took that report to Cabinet, it was important that Cabinet knew that a care home in the Vale had closed, and another one was imminently going to at that time. Obviously, since that time, the second one has closed, and I suppose all of that work is complete. And I think we were helped by the fact that we have very high vacancy levels across the care home sector, including within our own care homes. But this is very complicated work, as you can imagine, moving very elderly frail people from care home that they're very used to into new provision is fraught with difficulties. And I should say that Care Inspector Wales, who are obviously involved in these two closures, actually have been very complimentary in terms of how this council, or I should say social care staff colleagues across RMS and adult services, in terms of how they orchestrated these moves to make sure that went as smoothly as possible for all the individuals concerned. So I'm sorry to bring you something that is a bit after the fact. It has happened, but I think it's important that you are aware of it. It's not something we would have chosen to have taken out this amount of capacity, but the demand for elderly residential beds has been decreasing over time anyway, and then obviously with COVID-19 that significantly I suppose that demand drop off significantly increased. So I think it's important that you're aware of that. I think at the same time I shouldn't be bringing you a slightly out of date report about residential care without also telling you of the position in domiciliary care at the moment. And I appreciate it's not in the report, but I think as scrutiny members, given this is here, I should advise you that we are experiencing real difficulties in providing domiciliary care for people. Not the people who have got packages already. That's all happening as planned. We're actually having difficulty finding new packages of care for people who we're assessing now. What that means is we've got a prioritisation process in place, and I suppose what I can also advise you, I suppose, is that we have about 60 people who were either processing care or who are waiting for care, and in usual, in good times, that figure would probably only just about be in double figures. It would be 10 or thereabouts. So to have it in this magnitude is a cause for concern. While I'm talking about domiciliary care, I think it's probably important that I illustrate to you how much that has grown over the last couple of years and prior to that. So in In 2019, we were supporting 952 people with 15,800 care hours per week. That's now 1,095 people with 19,400 care hours. So to give you an idea, that's a 22% increase in 2 years. That's a significant amount of additional domiciliary capacity, care capacity that we are commissioning from the private sector, and you'll be familiar with that in perhaps in a not indirect way, in that whenever we've brought cost pressures or our financial reports, you will have seen that the line that has always been challenged, I suppose, the most and experiencing the most pressure has been domiciliary care, and that's because of that growth. The difficulty we have at the moment is that the market can't keep pace with the demand that we have on us. So that also means that will be affecting some hospital admissions. I understand there are small numbers at the moment in terms of the number of people in hospital who are requiring domiciliary care, but any wait in hospital is unacceptable. So I'm not suggesting that that's okay. So I thought I should just alert you to that, given the nature of this report. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lance. Councillor Thomas, I'm not sure if you were first, but I've chosen you randomly. Go for it.
I think I was first up, but only just by about a fraction of a second. Closure of 40 beds. I've got some notes. Closure of 40 beds in Island View and 16 beds at Tower Hill does leave a big hole in the county choices for what is actually a steadily increasing number of older people in our community. A lot of people choose to retire to areas like the Vale, out of the cities, but of course this has the consequence of putting real-time pressure on our ability to provide for them, as Lance referred to just now. I imagine some people are actually afraid of residential care due to some of the high-profile news items that we've been having, which might reflect the reason why we're getting more people looking for domiciliary care. I mean, they perhaps choose more to go into residential, but as I say, they're afraid to, because of the reports we've seen of some homes having a high incidence of mortality due to COVID over the last period. So, sadly, a consequence of the pandemic is that a lot of our older, more vulnerable neighbours actually haven't made it. That's impacted on recent figures as well. Although I think in the Vale, some of our homes for the elderly have actually been hugely successful and have a good record of what's of support during the pandemic. We can anticipate an increasing demand for home care as the population numbers recover over the next few years. So in the light of what we can anticipate, what forward planning is taking place now to try to stay ahead of these future pressures? I noticed that later in this meeting, we will be discussing performance exceptions, and particularly HS/A013 to do with older persons accommodation and care. I'd like to know whether this is also part of this discussion.
Okay, should I come back to that? I
Yes,
think
please.
I think you know, it's been our strategic intention, and I think that has been demonstrated probably with a number of reports that have come over the last few years to not increase, I suppose, our amount of institutional options for people who need care, primarily because they don't want them in the same way, and that's obviously been accelerated hugely through COVID. So what we have seen is expansion of the domiciliary care, as I've already spoken about, over 20% in 2 years. We've also seen the development of extra care units, which, you know, obviously I'd normally be able to say just over the road when we're in the council chamber, but I can't quite say that. But you're aware of Goleg Caredig, a significant flagship extra care facility. And I suppose we continue in that vein to seek opportunities to develop there. There are a number of options being considered and looked up in the pipeline across the Vale. So I would hope that we can continue to develop those. In terms of the expansion of domiciliary care, if I look at how much it has expanded over the years, I think we've done an incredible job of actually being able to meet that increased demand. We've been very clear with our care sector colleagues, you know, those actually providing the care, what it is we need. So we have provided them with information about where we would see there was a need and a demand and where we don't. And so we've been sharing with them for some time that actually we don't feel that there is a demand for standard older people's residential care currently. Some local authority areas have less than we do. We've repeatedly kind of asked for that expansion into domiciliary care. We have regular meetings with those providers and can continue to do that. I think a set of circumstances has arisen that I don't think we could have necessarily predicted, that have resulted in it being very difficult for us to find staff. And if I'm honest, those things are not unique to social care, although I understand, you know, we're probably feeling it more than others, but you'll be aware that, you know, there are all sorts of transport difficulties. I understand difficulties in farming and so on. And I think, you know, there is just a real shortage of people to do the jobs that we want them to do. So that's what we're experiencing currently. But I don't know whether that answers your question, Councillor Thomas, but we will obviously continue to work to maintain all of those improvements, really.
Yes, thank you for that. It certainly has answered a lot of questions. I understand what you're saying about the difficulties recruiting people, but maybe that's a consequence of a decision made a few years ago to pursue Brexit, which is always a tragedy. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. I just have to get my door, I'm afraid.
That's okay. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. And certain things I didn't want to say in the absence of Lance, so I'll come back to those. I think it was important to note from what Lance sort of described earlier that where we've got a sort of a cohort of people waiting for their domiciliary care packages, that is a moving feast. We've not got 60 odd people all waiting for forevermore. You know, we're dealing with a higher workload, and the officers are working through that. So it is a changing individuals within that number. Going back to something which Councillor Thomas reflected on, I think part of our strength has been the partnership that the authority has been able to build with both the residential and the domiciliary care sector from an early stage in the pandemic. In fact, before the pandemic, we were having mature conversations about rates. We were bringing back some realistic budget pressures. They have obviously involved extra financial pressures on the council, but the amount that we were able to fund particular providers was one that allowed us to have a collaborative relationship and a meeting of minds and an understanding of what pressures they were actually facing. When we go into the COVID situation, there's been very regular meetings, and you know, when we look at some of these, the two care homes are very different circumstances, and when it comes to Tower Hill and what was behind their communication with us, their personal decisions to close and all of that, it was a very constructive conversation. You know, I pay tribute to the officers and how they've worked to sort that out. your reference earlier to CRW being involved, that wasn't in a negative way. They obviously oversee all of these sorts of closures, and that's their commentary. You know, neither of these were shut down by CRW. I think I make that clear. And we've also been able to tap into our BCRS service to support some of that domiciliary care thing. That's important to note as well. So the pressures are there. I think also when we put this report together for the 2 residential homes prior to the summer, it was important to us to get that to Cabinet to note it, because with the ending of some of the payments Welsh Government were making for void beds, you know, ones that weren't being in use, we were unsure how much of an impact that would have by the end of the summer. It was important to put a marker into where we were as well. So I think it's positive, the conversations we continue to have. And as Lance described, it was about that dom care market. I think it was important, just Chair, to note in this context that our partnership working is why we continue to be in the strongest position to try and deal with this particular issue. Where, you know, councillors may come across people who have you know, been waiting a while, or you want to find out more information, then obviously please, you know, get in touch, and we can look at the individual circumstances, of course, but everyone's working as hard as they can to support people. I just wanted to make that point in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Thank you for that. Would anyone else like to make any comment on the reference or have any questions? Okay, I believe that we only just need to note this reference. So is anyone willing to move this? Okay, Councillor Thomas and Councillor Jarvie as the seconder. So thank you both. And now we can move on to agenda item 6, which is again from Lance, so which is a report from the Director of Social Services, which is the Annual Delivery Plan Monitoring Report, Q1 Performance 2021-2022. Over to you again, Lance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to talk through this report because it's very long, and you will all be familiar with these reports by now. Obviously, this is our quarter one report, and it indicates you know, how things are going under the corporate objectives that you can see with you. And so not all of those actions lie with social services, and I think Dave's here on the call as well, should there be any about leisure. But I know, Councillor Thomas, you'd asked specifically about one that related to housing, and I suppose, if I'm honest, I did ask my colleagues when I was putting this or going through it with my corporate colleagues about that action specifically, because we'd done a piece of work a while ago where we had used some of the ICF funding to support an in-depth piece of work to consider what kind of housing with care we needed in both the Vale and Cardiff, and I understand that report was completed, and my assumption is that action is that becoming council strategy. So that sits with my housing colleagues. So I don't think I can elaborate any further than that at this point. But my expectation, I suppose, will be that it will look at a fairly neutral number of care home bed requirements and look to continue to expand and develop options for delivering care in people's own homes, whether that be through you know, individual packages of care just going to somebody's house, or whether that be through additional extra care and supported living type units. So that's why I'm expecting and hoping to see, and as I said, given the options that I'm aware are being considered, I would hope that in the coming years we have something that we'll be able to point to and say that's come about as a result of that strategy. So I wasn't going to go into the report in any more detail, but if members have any questions, I'm sure one of us will be able to answer.
Thank you, lads. Is there anyone who would like to comment on the report or any questions? Hi, Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Report.
Yeah, thanks for answering the question I sort of posed in the last bit. Basically, just to say that, I mean, the report is what it is. Given the circumstances and given the period of time, I can congratulate the department on the work that it's been doing over the last period under extremely difficult circumstances, and I move that basically what are the expectations. We note the progress. I move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Would anyone else? Okay. Yeah, I was going to say if anyone else. So brilliant. Thank you very much. We can move on. Thank you, Lance. The last two agenda items, which the Chair has decided urgent on Agenda 7. I don't, and neither do I again on Part 8. So with that all being said, it's the end of the Scrutiny Committee, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a good evening all. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
Good evening. Take care.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Bye-bye.